Hi everyone, welcome back. So the last video was the release for Ambient Grunge version 5. Right now I want to get back to doing the kind of container elements project where I'm working on like some asset pieces to build container houses, which would be nice for people kind of ranging from regular artists that do everyday artwork to people that have more of an architectural background that want a bit of like a starting point for working on these kinds of projects, even if just conceptually, but also for clients as well, you know, for visualization, etc., since they have been based around 20-foot shipping containers, although it's a little bit difficult making everything modular for the Blender grid. But anyway, today what I'm going to do is just continue with what I call a proof case, which is where I work on a kind of proof of concept, like a render, an art scene, that's not where I make the assets, but it's where I help to visualize what I need to make or how I want to use the assets. So it is a bit of a block out video. I look at this, I just add a few things to make it a bit more interesting, and then I'll take that away for deconstruction later. So what I'm thinking is like a stairwell coming up here. As you can see, I've got like a little cube there waiting. Maybe a cover, maybe if there was like a kind of outside seating area almost, and maybe a cover that kind of extends around the kind of top layer here, or something to cover from the sun above. I'm not sure, we'll play around. And it'd be nice to maybe consider things from different angles as well. So let me get on with the stairs. I'll consider this a block out as well. So that's another thing as well recently. When I do videos like this, I've had one or two comments that are like, oh, you know, that's cool as a block out, but it'd be nice if there was more detail to it, or it'd be nice to see the finished scene. So I'm just like checking the scale of this guy's feet and trying to like estimate what size the stair should be. So it raises the question, okay, why don't I do as many like finished art videos anymore? Well, the thing is, when working on like projects and products like this, everything is about time consideration and management, right? So as you'll likely know if you've done 3D artwork, the most significant things tend to happen relatively quickly, and you'll spend like a really long time closer to the end of the project, or maybe not even closer to the end. Basically, you spend most of the time making minor changes depending on what the project is. So when it comes to actually recording something for YouTube, there's this general like higher state of energy, which is what we'd be doing now, right? So I have energy now, I'm talking to you while I'm working on things. And then as the process goes on, we kind of clear the block out phase, and I'm getting more into like the minor decisions of like the process. So say I am making a product and work on an exciting part of a proof case, yes, and then I'm still recording, and then I start working on like a minor detail, like a chair, for example. It doesn't have to be a chair specifically, but the point is the recording's dragging on, and I'm spending like 2 hours working on a chair, and I'm thinking, A, will any of this be interesting? But B, I'm going to have to sit through like 3 hours of footage of one thing being worked on, and it's just not that fun. So that's why when I'm in this kind of state of mind where we're just focusing on working on, you know, product type things, resource projects, etc., when it comes to the stuff that you see, it's usually that fast section. And it's not like you don't end up seeing finished results in terms of scenes and stuff. It's just more that when you do see them, there will be a time jump where like in the next video on the project, I'll be like, hey, I worked on this a bit more. This is what it looks like now. Time for another block out. Anyway, so what I've been doing while I was just talking there was just a little bit of a stair design. It is quite large or long, but it might not look too bad. Let me assign the right materials. It does cover up quite a bit of the container here, which may look a little bit ungainly. Maybe it's just because I'm not used to looking at it. However, I suspect, yes, from different angles, having quite prominent stairs might actually be quite interesting. Yeah, it kind of helps to like slice through the monotony of the regular cubic shape. And we could always do like some interesting geometric things kind of under it as well. Again, maybe some kind of larching wooden stuff. But like I said, this is all block out. Kind of helps me to understand what I'll need. The back of this container house has obviously no love. Maybe I could place another camera here just to, you know, keep that in consideration. So let's do that. I'm going to need a new collection for cameras. Oh no, I've got one. Okay. Duplicate, make active, move it around. I like to store the positions of like my favorite angles. Let's do another one for this front side. Okay, and obviously like storing different camera angles gives you positions to return to, kind of adjusts your focus as well. From here I might be like, oh well, this area needs love over here. I can see the inside here, etc. But for now we're focusing on this angle. So that's a block out of stairs. If I was going to do it modularly, maybe I'll do it in like shorter segments, or I'll do it in one segment. And whenever I think about the pieces I make, I have to consider like the origin points. So maybe the origin will be up in the top corner, and it might connect to like like a pre-existing point on like the collection asset for the container. What I mean by that is I have a container collection asset for the pack, and I've got like these empties representing anchor points. Maybe I should put some on the other corners as well. But basically you can hook the 3D cursor to it and use that as temporary storage. But then if there were other modular pieces kind of designed around that anchor point, then we can just like snap them to it, you know? So I've got a few like I-beam pieces in here. They don't connect properly to the container here, but we can just kind of fake it for now. As long as it doesn't come through the wall. Maybe I'll need to like thin it out a bit, but let's slide you up. Again, as a proof case, I'm not considering too much like accuracy when it comes to measurements or realism. This is the fun side of the project where it's just like, hey, just, you know, make some art with it. Get the vibe for where you want to go with this. Now there is overlap. What I'm going to do is actually just thin this out as if we were using different measurements for the beam. Let's move all of these things out a little bit, okay, just to clear the boundary. Oh, I should do it with the other selected as well. Let's do that. Give us a little bit of a buffer space. That one was not actually corrected in terms of size, so let me just duplicate that. Okay, so it's not accurate, but it gives us something else to look at there. Now what I'm thinking is some kind of like wooden covering here. It might get a bit too chaotic, but I'm thinking like wooden bars having gaps between them. It might be a bit too gappy for this kind of project, which already has lots of gaps in between things. Maybe we'd be able to offset it with more kind of like paneling for the railings, or I don't know, we'll see how it goes. Let me just make a cube, scale this down in edit mode. I don't know what kind of size I'd want this to be. Okay, let's move that along. Bring the bottom up a bit. So the way I'm going to have to do this, you're going to be offset a little bit. I'm going to try and make the thickness kind of relative to the container there. I'm going to grab that vertex and just assign that to be the origin point, because then I'll be able to do like some micro, you know, grid snapping kind of like that as we go along. So now I need to take this face and think about how I'm going to do this. So I'd want it to be kind of connected at that point. Maybe if I move that down one notch, and this one also down one notch. And then I need to do like the extra pieces as well, but just in the meantime, let's just set up a different material. The thing is though, I'm calling this larching just because it's wood, but it doesn't necessarily have to be larching specifically. Wood can be like somewhat pale like this before it is kind of weathered over time, and depending on the wood, it can change color, become either darker or even lighter, like more kind of steely in its appearance. So let me just get the relative positions kind of how I want them. So it's hard to see from this angle, but I was just wondering whether some kind of covering there might be interesting, or whether it should be more solid, given that we've already got some kind of like corrugation back there. Unless I do something a bit more interesting and cover that original one with like another layer of something. Well, let me fix this up first before I make any more choices like that. All right, I'm going to need to do a little bit of like clever transform work to get these to like slide along to how I want them to be. This is actually a good like little test. So look, in global mode, obviously I can't just slide this perfectly back because we'll get it wrong. In local, obviously it's the same thing as global. Normal, the face is pointing that way, so that's still wrong. So how do we do it? The cursor maybe? No, not quite. It's over there, so it's offset. I already know how to do it, don't worry. So look, the edge is kind of pointing the right direction. So we'll grab the edge, go to transform, press the plus button, and it's going to store that there. Then if we go to face, grab the face, we'll notice it's completely accurate for the edge. We could grab all of them and still use the edge as the right kind of transform. I'm noticing while doing it, there is a little bit of a scale difference between the faces, because if we look at this bottom edge, if I slide this back and forth, you can see how it's changing thickness slightly, but that's okay. It's just a proof case. It doesn't matter too much. Okay, nice. So the kind of scales have been corrected a bit, although I might do a little bit more now that I can actually see them here, just to maybe get them to correspond to the edge of the I-beams a bit. And now, because it makes everything look better, let's add a little bit of bevel. But let me just assign the scales. So I'm copying modifiers, and that just makes the edge slightly nicer as well. Maybe the white on the actual container is too flat, so ta-da! This is just a little bit of AO. This is powered by the old version of Ambient Grunge, which was actually just updated, so maybe I should grab the new version instead. But oh well, I can look procedurally add a bit of muck along the edge of things as well. Ambient Grunge is available on Gumroad and Superhive. But I don't like getting too distracted, so I'm actually just going to keep it clean for now. Oh god, look, a completely reflective house looks weird. Okay, so let me just have a quick little look around. It's kind of nice under here, a little bit cozy. I do always like things like this with little breaks for shadows to appear throughout the sky. But when the shadows fall, they're falling on corrugation, which is just, I don't know if it makes it a bit too complex. Let me try simplifying this railing a little bit. I don't think it looks better having kind of like flatter shapes there for the railing, so I want to keep that detail. Let me just try something with this. So I've just added an additional layer on top of that pre-existing one. This would need some kind of support. I'm still not even sure that I kind of like how that might look. I wonder if I can solidify its presence with kind of more I-beam structural stuff. I don't think I've added a full like kind of cross multi-junction as a asset yet, but let's see. Just kind of moving these things around freeform at the moment without concern for snapping, just to see what it might look like to put a bit of extra element there. Does it help it to make more structural sense? Or is it just too much? Obviously not as much sun is kind of let through there now. I think using the I-beams is a bit too much. We want it to be a bit more open. But they do need some kind of support. So let me just grab an edge here. I'm just going to improv with a bit of cylinder stuff and maybe some kind of like metal encasement. What I'm doing is I'm just kind of loosely putting some shapes in. I just put like a little cube here on the corner. Don't worry about what that is at the moment. It might just be like if I'm thinking about doing a metal border around the top there. Here I just put a column here. I didn't like how it looked, so I'm wondering what it would look like if there was a shape here instead. Unsure about that. Let's kind of extend it all the way. That might make sense. Or maybe a kind of cross section along this one area. I've seen this on buildings before, more like skyscrapers in London, but that's kind of just Origin U. Something like that, and then we can fill it in a bit. Although before we do that, let's clear out this kind of top railing bit, because, people would need to be able to get up the stairs. Let's make this a single user. Just going to take a quick break. Alright, we're back. While I was having a break, I was just trying to think of ways to kind of break up the absolute repeating geometry. And I'm wondering about just like a giant F-off piece of concrete. But I'm not sure where I would put it. Something large that it might seem like the house was almost like built to navigate around, if that makes sense. So it would either be here or on the other side, or maybe both. Obviously it'll look weird to start with, and I don't really want to cover up like important details of the house. And we may need to find newer angles, but like, yeah, something big, maybe even behind the house as well, I wonder. Because oftentimes interesting things happen when you give the subject an environment to work within, if that makes sense. So if we enclose it in something, then that might help to give us direction. Let me just move some of this terrain out a bit. And now I'm trying to keep things untextured. Maybe I will grab a texture just for the concrete, because it might help to set the cognitive context for the scene, if you want to put it that way. And then it wouldn't really matter. We could have like a space down here for like plants or something. Maybe another like semi-raised platform. Have some vegetation on the top here and then on like a mid platform, if that made sense. So if that was kind of lower, let me just give these a temporary material. Stick those to the ground. Or maybe this doesn't need to be as high as the stairs either. No, I don't know. I think it's kind of better kind of making it a little bit imposing. Yeah, let me grab a texture quickly from a castle that I visited not too long ago. All right, I think I found the right kind of picture for a concrete. So let me transfer that. And I can maybe give HexScatter a try, one of my other products, to create seamless materials from non-seamless textures. All right, it's not square, it's just a basic image taken on iPhone. I could make it square, but maybe we'll see how things hold up. So let me make a concrete material. From here, I'm going to remove most things. Let's see, HexScatter, what kind of node do I need? I only need a basic one. TP hex splat image, maybe. Or let me do the preamble version, just in case. Let me, first of all, plug it in, so I know that it actually works. Okay, nice. Random rotation, cool. Reduce global scale. We see there is cell blending, nice. Okay, we're going to go in and replace all the references, although there is a helper add-on to help with this. Okay, so that's done. Now we don't want to make it metallic because it's definitely not. A little bit of scale random. Let's also add a bevel. Okay, now I want to kind of desaturate, maybe darken it a little bit, but immediately, HexScatter definitely works. I mean, look at that. It's infinite, and it's just like a generic picture taken with an iPhone. That worked better than I expected. So if you're wondering about that, HexScatter, it's one of our products. We spent a long time trying to make the perfect nodes for creating seamless materials. And as noted, I used the preamble TP hexplat image one image just because it's one image rather than a PBR material, which we do support. And then I had to change the references. So each of these color nodes inside of the node had to be changed to this one image. But as I said, there is a helper add-on that helps to assign things like that. We don't make the add-on. It's made by some community members, and it's on Superhive if you like the tool and you want to make it a bit easier to use. So let me grab a hue, saturation, and value and just slightly turn down the saturation on that. I could also bring in the newer version of ambient grunge. Let's grab the quick grunge group. So before outputting to the principled, I'm just going to grab the object texture coordinate, pass our HexScatter color into the base color, pass the color into the output. Now what that does here is we can see we get procedural grunge. So we've got two things going on. We get HexScatter creating an infinite material from just a generic generic iPhone image. Then we've got ambient grunge giving us the ability to kind of make that a little bit more realistic. See how easy that was? So now we're applying the same material to our other concrete bases, and then let me just apply the scale to those. Select the first one, Control L, copy modifiers to bevel them out a bit. So by having kind of like larger surfaces, what it does is it gives us reason to add complexity to the house shape. Does that make sense? Because, you know, things which are visually nice to look at, we have areas of large details, areas of kind of medium details, and areas of small details. But if it's all too complex, then it kind of throws the balance off. But also this gives us some more interesting perspectives from different angles. If I bypass the grunge here, make it a bit simpler, maybe it would actually be nice kind of looking down the stairs from up here, maybe looking down to a garden area. We're kind of giving ourselves new areas to work with. Actually, from here would be quite nice as well, especially if we had like a little bit of desert-like vegetation there along that concrete border. If this was textured as well, that could be quite nice. And I'm just really impressed with how this material looks already. Like, it's not even a PBR one. We've got no height detail or anything. I might just quickly send that to Azzy, my co-creator on Hexscatter, just to show them how that looks. Even down in the corners here, pretty good, actually, especially combined with that grunge. I am quite happy with that. I can desaturate it even more as well if we want to go like kind of almost complete white on the concrete, which might actually be nicer, but I think a tiny bit of color, probably sensible. Okay, let me just make these planter concrete blocks a little bit more sensibly packed together. I'm going to do another one outwards as well, but make that a bit wider. And maybe something for like a front garden-like area that's small. Oh, hey. Maybe just a rectangle. Sod it. Let's put it there, see what it does. So what we have is environmental context. Do you know what? Maybe if I even moved something like that up there to the top, because it would kind of feels like it might work better along concrete. I wonder. Let me just kind of... I've saved it, so it doesn't matter if I mess up at the moment. Maybe in both places, but let me just see what this looks like. Curiosity dictates I must know. Dupli. What if... extending outwards a bit kind of relieves the area down here for maybe something a bit more vegetative, and up there the flat surface for the concrete is kind of nicer for the shadows to fall on. Maybe that kind of layer is disturbing the shadows too much. Oh no, maybe it does actually add to it. Right, okay. Yep, I think I'm going to remove it from that section. Let me just reset the file quickly. I think that is the direction I want to take it. We're going to do a bit of like an L shape maybe. Has to start from on top of the concrete, I believe. Let's just get the feeling of it. And what if the length extends? Or what if I do something with these where they extend outwards? Sorry if my voice trails off while I experiment. That's just something that happens. These measurements are not precise. I've just kind of overscaled that because I want to know what it feels like. That's too much. I think we just take the original bars and we extend them outwards, although having a more complex light pattern on the concrete is nicer. I'm just going to send a little screenshot of this to Azzy just to show them how nice Hexscatter looks. And I'm just planting the seed as well for us to do a material pack together, because if this is an effortless version of making a material, then imagine what we could do if we actually put effort into it. All right, so one thing I want to try is having variable lengths for these kind of wooden panels, but I'm not sure how long to do them. Does something like that work? Obviously, if the heights and if it was all placed more appropriately, would that work out? Or does it take away too much? Are they too thick? Let me remove the under ones and lower them down. Yep, shift them along a bit. I think I might need to thin them out a little bit, just a tiny bit. Okay, not bad. Now let me bring this side concrete one up a bit. Try and match the height a bit more, unless we could keep it down and then we do like some kind of, I don't know, almost columnar type thing. So if someone was coming out of the house, they would actually have some kind of view over like a horizon if the environment is nice, if that makes sense. Maybe. So it's starting to think about the purpose of the angles. Let's get rid of these panels. Just making some modifications to these end bits now as well. No, I don't think it makes sense shortening them too much because they also provide shade, but I need to find a way to make it look like it's not such an abrupt change. Maybe if there were more of them and they were kind of thinner, I'm not sure. One thing I love about my nodes are just how like adaptable they are. Ambient grunge and Hexscatter together, it just, no matter what I do with it, it just adapts. All that grunge fitting in the space. Such like easy ways to do like, ooh, subtle abstract architectural artwork. How cool is that? Look, ooh, brutalism structure. Actually, to be fair, it might not be a bad idea just doing something random like that out the front. Do you see how easy that is? Just makes anything look right. There we go. Ta-da! I'm an artist. Let's try making it a little bit smaller. Very nice. That'll fit nicely there. And now if there's nothing behind except container walls, then it won't look weird kind of being in the way. Now that I've got detail on the concrete, I can't really stick to like the oversimplified style anymore. So I might as well dirty it up a bit. Just maybe doing a little bit of like reforming so we get the front of the house here. What's the best position for that? Central is too obvious. Like, yeah, offset a bit. Make people think about it a bit more. There's my guy. Maybe I won't put anything there and we'll assume that there's some kind of good connection. Or maybe I should. Maybe... Oh, what if the material's not consistent? What if there's like a metal underside? Like a plate. There has to be a metal plate underneath it. Like that. Maybe it can curve down a little bit. Let's set up a material, just see how that feels. Does it have to be the full width? Who knows? Let's take a copy of that. That there. I'm leaving the grunge on just because now we are paying attention to texture details, which I wasn't sure if I wanted to do. I might as well make it fun for me by leaving it on. Let's go back. I am going to improv. Actually, no, that's not... Sorry, spontaneous decisions. I am going to remove one layer of vertices, so it's just a flat plane. I am then going to take the edge, then go down on the z-axis, then go down on the y-axis. Grab these two. That's already beveling. What I'm going to do is add a solidify modifier, but I can also bevel the edges like that if I wanted. So now we're relying on modifiers to help kind of fill it in, but it gives us really good control over like where we want to do metal paneling. And then we'll do a secondary bevel to help round out our result. There we go. And then I'm going to replace the other ones with the same style, but obviously I will make the actual layout unique to each of them. Okay, I'm still putting the metal support paneling underneath, but that's starting to look quite nice there. Yeah, I think kind of cohesively it's starting to come together. Now, what should I do with that? Should I extend it all the way? Should I get kind of creative with like a bit of a pattern in between? Help to sell the sense of support. And also have curiosity. What happens if I lower the sky texture? I've still got the sun active, obviously. Let's disable that briefly. So we're now entirely relying on the world nodes. Move the rotation around. Still kind of cool. Yeah, not bad. Could do some lights around the base there. Might look nice at night, but we're not really focused on night at the moment. So add some edge loops. See what happens if I kind of up them a bit like this. Is that a bit too much? Yeah, I think it might be too much. Again, we're still falling back into the trend of like too many lines. What if we make it a couple? Just a couple. Yeah, is that enough to kind of help sell it? Even from here as we exit the top section of the house, let me reduce the muck on the actual wood. Gonna make the wood a bit more pale. So as we came out, maybe there'd be like a, nice horizon, some vegetation. We'd walk around. Before we go down the steps, we can take a look out at the world. Look left down here to see our garden decorative piece. Maybe I'll put a bit of like desert vegetation there. Look around. Very nice. Descend the stairs. Nice to look up and kind of watch the wooden metal bars go by. Once we get down here, we get to the nice garden area. Walk down a path, look left, see the vegetation, look up. I'm starting to like the feeling of this place, but this video is dragging on, so I should probably end it here and then carry on a bit later. So what I'll do is I will put this file on the Patreon for $5 tier members and above, but that'll be an educational use license. I kind of prefer how that looks, a bit like that, a little bit like a tank trap almost. Cool. All right, if you made it this far, put some kind of crane related emoji in the comments. If you do that, I'll see who did make it this far. Have a great day, everyone. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.